Hey guys, Ash von Chamier, owner of Rough Cut Productions in Tallahassee, Florida. This technique, you have to know how to do it. If you don't know how to do it, you're plain and simply, you're missing out on what you're capable of creating and editing. Dynamic range.
In a world where nuclear war has begun, vampires fought back in super real 3D.
So while I'm going to show you guys how to do this in Adobe Premiere, any program that offers the ability to basically draw out masks around certain portions of your image, you can do this with. And Adobe Premiere has a fantastic ability to do this right inside of the program, and you can feather the edges as much as you want. If you don't even know what feathering edges is, I mean, I'm going to show you because that's really important to get this technique to work. You absolutely want to be feathering the edges. Here we go. Without further ado, let's hop into the Adobe Premiere and open up something where I can show you how to do it. All right, we're inside of Premiere. Now I just opened up a project that has a couple clips. I found a couple landscape clips from filming that I just did over the summer. And actually this is a red clip and this is a 6K clip and this is a 4K video window. So I need to shrink this a bit. I think it's around 70. Here, let's take a look. If you click on your motion here, you can actually see the frame size. You can click down here to zoom out and we can see, yeah, I've shrunk it that much. But look how much bigger the 6K clip actually is. Watch this. If I highlight it and hit motion, that is how much bigger the 6K clip is than a 4K clip. That is pretty fun to be able to work with for cropping and zooming and panning and all kinds of post-production stuff. Anyway, right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna focus on this technique of color grading where we can maximize the dynamic range of what your camera had filmed, okay? And in doing this, we're not gonna mess around with LUTs, we're not gonna get into like official looks. I'm really just gonna focus on creating the most vibrant, HDR style image that I can get, and LUTs and all that stuff, that can be a whole other color grading tutorial, so I don't want to get bogged down with that. We're going to focus on just maximizing the look of dynamic range in the shot, okay? So let's go ahead and shrink this back and go to 69, I believe is actually the best size to bring it down. And so it's shrunk there, and it, you know, it's just sits a little bit outside the edge, but that's fine. We're just going to leave it like that, and we'll zoom in over here. All right, there's our image. Now, this image already has a pretty decent amount of dynamic range. Here, we'll start at the beginning. This is a brighter section. I would probably use this. So I'm not even going to take advantage of the fact that this is raw and the idea that I'm not going to go into all the things that you can adjust of the actual raw file. I'm going to focus on just using Lumetri. Just Lumetri. Now, something that a lot of people do not realize with Lumetri is they just have this one panel open over here, right? Your Lumetri panel, which is fantastic. I do use this. We're going to use this. But you can do more than one instance of Lumetri on clips. You do not need to only, like, you don't get just the one shot and you're done. You can add it as an effect, and I make a favorite folder here. And it is one of my favorites, absolutely. And so you can literally just click and drag and drop that into your effect control panel. And you can do this time and time and time again. So all these parameters of basic correction, creative curves, color wheel, all this stuff that is over here, you can access this way as well, because this is the same stuff. You can do more and more instances of this. So you're going to see we're going to use like 3 of these to get this dynamic range thing happening. If you only use one instance, then you're just attacking the whole image as a whole, and anything you do is going to affect everything across the whole image, and that's the whole problem. We want to actually trace out parts of it and put individual parameter settings on those specific parts. And that is where the beauty of creating a mask comes in. If you're not familiar with mask, then you probably have never used Photoshop. And it's pretty standard issue in Photoshop that you create masks. So we're going to do that here. If you add Lumetri as an effect, up here we've got a circle, we've got a square, and we've got the pen tool. Now if you just hit the circle, you'll end up with a mask that's a circle. And anything that you do adjustment-wise is only going to affect stuff inside of the circle. So if we brought down the exposure, you know, boom. You see it's only in the circle, or you can hit invert, and then it'll only affect the things on the outside of the mask. Now, if that hard line looks terrible, what you can do is you can put a feather on it. And feathering is essential to get your masks to blend in, look natural, and not reveal themselves, because you don't want people knowing that you put a mask on it. So if you put a mask on, we'll just type in a huge number here, like 1,000. See how it gradiates out? And that's exactly what we're going to be doing. Now, this is not the example of the mask that we're creating. I'm going to go ahead and delete that. They've also got a square. We'll also just delete this Lumetri and we'll just add a new one there. Boom, drag and drop. Now, you can use a square, but the best is the pen tool, because you can literally just trace out exact individual parts, which is just magnificent. What we're going to do is we're going to get just the bright parts of just the clouds, and maybe, no, I'm going to leave that rain alone. I'm going to get just the bright parts of the clouds. Now, if you trace this out, just the brightest parts of the clouds here, I did not mean to rotate that. If you zoom in, it's easier to not get caught up in it turning into a rotate tool. But anyway, so now if we make adjustments here, it's only going to affect things inside of this mask. So let's go ahead and bring down the highlights. Let's go ahead and bring down the shadows. Look at that. See all the cloud coming back in? Let's play with the whites for a sec. I think I'm going to leave the whites alone. Just Control Z to revert that back. Let's test out the blacks. Pretty much no difference, which is fine. And we can play around with the color temperature. And when it comes to clouds in general, I like pushing blue back in. I just enjoy that. Now, if you click anywhere in this blank space of your panel, just click anywhere off of this highlighted source, the mask goes away, the outline of it, so we can just better see the image. Now, this looks like dog poo-poo. And the reason is it's this hard edge, and this is where the feathering comes in. Let's go ahead and put a feather on it. Let's just put 500 on there. And we can see that line just totally went away, okay? And if we turn this effect off, we can see what we did have. Boom, look. See how much more detail we have happening in the clouds now? And we can even exaggerate that a little bit more. I think maybe I could get away with bringing those highlights down even more. And I like, when I'm making these decisions in general, I like to put the feather on first, and when it comes to the mask, I like to not have the line on. I like to just click off of it and just see how it's actually looking in the image. I just feel like I can make better decisions that way, so that's personal preference. And we have only attacked one part. Let's go ahead and attack these middle mountains as a separate thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on the Lumetri as an effect and drag and drop it up there. Boom. And now we have a second Lumetri. See the power in this? Now we're going to create another mask. Click on that pen tool there. And we're going to go ahead and start tracing out the mountains in here. And I'm going to dodge this rain. That's actually rain down there. Isn't that cool? I'm not going to make that part of this mask, though. And then we're going to go around these trees a little bit. And you can be you don't have to be terribly exact with this. Because of the feathering, it's going to hide a lot of what you do. See? And another thing to know when you're using the pen tool is that if you just click and release, then what you end up with is a completely straight jagged line, which honestly works better than you think it would. But if you click and drag, you hold down and drag, you create anchor points, and you can actually smooth out and round out edges. So it's whatever you need to do for the given time. I do just tapping. Sometimes I'll drag around if I have like an interesting curve that I need to get a little rounded out better. You can do that too. And so kind of come down here and kind of move our way around all these frontline trees, because I want to make those a separate adjustment. And we're almost at the finish line. Now, something else to know. Instead of just closing this off here, what you really want to do is you should zoom out, and you should take these lines outside of the video frame. And the reason is that when you put the feathering on, if you only have it to the edge here, then it's going to start getting like that adjustment inside of the mask is going to start revealing itself on the edges. But if you take it outside of the video window, that will not happen, and you'll only see the feathering happening on the top line, the bottom line, you know, whatever your shape is. But if you want that effect to really happen all the way through the entire video frame, you're going to have to take that mask outside the edges, which is no big deal, and that's exactly what we just did. I'm going to zoom back in now, and I'm going to go ahead and just throw a feather on there. I'm just going to say 350. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click off of this mask just somewhere in there, and that way I like to work this way. I like to not see the actual mask. And another thing to point out before we make these adjustments is I can make all the adjustments to Lumetri right inside of here. This is all the same as this, but these sliders sure are fun. I mean, this is a little bit better of a UI, and this is only going to represent the last instance of Lumetri that you put on. So anything that we adjust here is not going to affect this first instance over here. It's only going to affect the last instance. If we open this up, we can see all the adjustments I made are still here. But if I adjust something over here, it affected nothing here, right? But we can see that it did affect this in here. I brought the highlights down, okay? Now I did that blindly. I don't know if that's where I want the highlights to sit. Let's start making some judgment calls. So I'm going to bring down the highlights a little bit because it's a little kind of hazy down there. I'm going to bring down the shadows some. Look at the detail kind of. Now I'm going to push some contrast back in. I'm going to play around with the blacks. Kind of really want it to punch down there. I want it more contrasty. Let's test out the exposure if we brought it down or up. We're just going to leave the exposure where it was at. And we could also play around with the saturation here. Let's pump up. Ooh, that looks really nice. I like how much blue's coming in there. And we can even play around with the white balance itself and see if we want even more blue. I kind of dig it. Now that's pretty extreme and fun and funky, and I get it if you don't like it that way, but for the fun of it, I'm going to go really exaggerated here, and that looks fun to me. Okay, so what did that do? Let's turn it on and off. Let's turn it off. Boom, look at that. That's what it was. Now look at it, right? This is so different than just adjusting the entire image as a whole with one big color grade across the whole thing. You want to trace out sections and play around with your highlights and shadows and maximize the potential of the dynamic range. All right, so this is coming along nicely. We're going to go ahead and zoom back out for a sec. And we're going to create another mask on just this tree line in here and bring up the shadows. I might actually even include this mountain here because I got a little darker than I wanted it. All right, so let's go ahead and grab Lumetri, drag and drop it in there, grab the pen tool, go ahead and trace out. I'm going to include this really dark shadow of those mountains there, and then we're going to trace out these trees again, and you can see how rough I'm going with it because the feathering is just really, it covers up so much of what you're doing. It's amazing. All right, we're almost done. The hard part of these trees. Come up here and around. All right, and then I'm going to take it outside the video. Let's zoom out even more. I want to make sure, in case I create a big feather, that, see, you can just go all the way on the outside of the video window, and that's just a safety net there to make sure that your effects are going to go all the way to the edge of the video. All right, let's go ahead and throw a feather on there. Let's maybe try 300 on this one. And you can play around with that. You can always change it later. All right, now for this, we want to bring up the shadows and stuff. So let's hop over here. Again, this is only going to affect the last instance of Lumetri. And let's bump up some shadows. Look at all the stuff still in there. Let's play around with the exposure, actually. Wow, look at that. If we bring it up a stop, look at all that. Look at all the image that's sitting in there. Let's try the whites a little bit. Wow. And the blacks, I think we're going to leave the blacks alone. All right. That is looking a lot better. Let's play around with saturation. Ooh, look at that. That feels really fun. And this is a very, very vibrant image now. All right, and let's play around with the contrast. Yeah, I like it. Just a little bump in contrast, and maybe we'll even bring up the exposure just a little bit more. Yeah, that's pretty fun right there. That's pretty neat. Now that feather looks a little, I kind of want it, I'm going to, see here, it's a little bit too bright. You can kind of see it's giving itself away. So let's make the feather a little bigger. So that way it smooths it out a little more. Let's try even a bump higher than that. Let's go to 400. Okay, and then we can also, you can still adjust your mask after the fact. I think this one just needs to come down a little bit. So you can grab your anchor points. There we go. I think that's feeling a little more natural. All right, and then if we click off of that, let's see what we got. That's looking a lot better. So there you go. There's there's a very different image. You can also play around, just for the fun of it, let's just try the white balance here. Let's just warm those trees up a little bit, or do we want to make them colder? Just a hair of warmth there, like maybe the sun's peeking right here. That'd be kind of fun. Okay, so what did we do? Well, let's see. If we toggle our global effects button, which I like to put on my video window, you can add any button you want by hitting the plus button, and then you can click and drag and drop these in. This is the effects button. I like to have that there, so it's a global effects. And if I turn that off, there was the original image. Look at that. I mean, there's just so much more happening. That feels so much more like of a high dynamic range there. So let's do another one. Okay, so that was a red clip, and you might be saying, well, red's already got a ton of dynamic range. I get it. All right. Well, how about this one? All right. This is a ProRes clip. This is FS700, which is an older Sony camera now. I think it was released in 2014 or something. And I love the camera, and it holds up great with the red. And you can see that actually it's not, I must have filmed in UHD here because it's not going all the way to the edge. So we're just going to make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Now it goes to the edge. Okay. So again, I don't want to get into LUTs and all that. So for the sake of it, to get this out of the log look initially, I'm just going to go ahead and put a curve on it, and I'm going to boost saturation. Let's put the saturation at 200, and let's create an S curve. Just something loose so it doesn't feel like it's in the log. There, that's getting a little better right there. And okay, something about there. That'll be fine. And you can see that now it doesn't feel like it's in log. Let's turn that off. There it was in log. There it is. That's how easy it can be to get out of log, especially if you're using a decent codec like ProRes. All right, and now we want to make this feel a lot more dynamic range. I mean, let's start attacking those clouds, shall we? Let's drag another instance of Lumetri up, and let's go ahead and use our pen tool, and let's zoom out. And these trees up front are our only adversary in making this a little more complicated, but not complicated, guys. Just do a rough tracing out of this. Okay. And, oh, I didn't need to go down that far. Sorry. We only need to go down this far because we're just grabbing the clouds right now, okay? And kind of put a few in there. Get over here. Be a little mindful of these leaves, maybe. We'll just go around that. Okay, and then I go outside of the video window just to make sure it goes all the way to the edge here. All right, let's zoom back in. And let's just throw a feather on. Let's start with 250. All right, that's a pretty big gradation there. And let's go ahead and bring down these shadows, guys. Like, just grab your shadows, start bringing them down. Let's grab the highlights and bring those down. Look at the detail starting to come back in those clouds. Let's see about exposure. Let's play around with that. Now, you got to be real gentle with bringing down exposure. It can get really obvious really fast. I think just a -0.2 is plenty. And I can see that I actually want this to come down a little further. So I'm just going to grab these and bring them down so they touch a little bit more there, because I want those clouds not disappearing over the horizon line. Okay, that's pretty good. Now let's play around. We can click off of this so we can really see what we're getting here. That's feeling better. Now it's a little yellow in here. Let's put a little white balance adjustment of pushing the blue in those clouds. Look at that. Isn't that pretty? And then we can pump up the saturation a little bit for the fun of it. And let's see if the blacks make any. I was just, you know, on really bright things, blacks barely ever make a difference, but sometimes I like just having them down. And the contrast, maybe we could bump up the contrast and then bring down the exposure a little. And I'm not sure. Yeah, actually, we're just going to leave that alone. Let's just leave it like that. That's feeling pretty good. Now, what was the difference that we did? Well, let's turn our effect off and see. Wow. I mean, look at that. That was that. There's that. Now, if I put these adjustments on this whole image, it's not going to feel right. We have to sectionally grab this in chunks. So now let's go ahead and get these middle mountain section. This middle mountain section. Sorry for my broken English. We will grab another Lumetri, and we'll grab a pen tool, and we're going to go ahead and trace out the middle of the mountains, shall we? Okay. There we go. Come down here. We want to try and avoid this front tree because we're going to make those a separate mask in a bit. And this one tree here is interesting. It's kind of interesting how tall that one tree is, isn't it? That was weird. This is in North Carolina, by the way, in the Blue Ridge Mountains. All right. And down. I'm gonna kind of avoid that one because it's a little bit. I feel like it's just too different. I want to affect it more with the front line of trees when we make that one last mask. I'd rather affect it in the same way. Whereas I want all these middle mountains to be a certain thing. We're gonna bring down the shadows and really make it crisp and punchy in there, pump up the saturation a bit, and again, just at a different amount than we want to do with the clouds or the front trees here that we're going to trace out. All right, we'll get over here and be a little mindful of these leaves here and close it out. Now we've got a whole mask there. Let's go ahead and throw a feather on of, let's say, let's go 250 again. All right. And let's make some adjustments, shall we? Let's bring down the highlights some. Let's bring down the shadows. Look at all the detail coming in there. Let's bring the blacks down. Yeah, let's push the contrast. Whoa, that's pretty fun. Look how sharp and vibrant that's starting to feel. Let's play around with the exposure for a sec. Yeah, I feel like we could bump it up a half stop. And let's play with saturation. Man, that is feeling juicy. Okay, I like that. But let's see, do we want it to be that warm? I mean, it does feel pretty good warm. Let's try it cool. I'm kind of digging the cool. We're going to go with cool. Okay, and see how, I mean, we're doing some pretty exaggerated stuff here, but it's pretty fun. It's a very vibrant image. All right, and now let's see what we did. Let's turn the effect off. Wow, look at what it was, and now look what, I mean, come on. That just looks way better. All right, now let's grab these trees on the front line. Let's create another Lumetri instance. Grab in here. And something to know is if you have a mask and you really are only trying to affect the stuff on the outside of it, like let's say you made a really complicated mask, like even one that I'm kind of making now, and you really just wanted a mask that did the exact opposite of it as far as the sections of the image that it's going to be affecting, you can copy and paste a mask onto another instance of Lumetri. Like you can totally do that. So you can create one mask, affect everything on the inside of the mask, and then you want to affect everything on the outside of the mask separately. You can just copy, paste that mask onto a new instance of Lumetri. So you can totally do that, and I do it all the time. We don't need to do that in this case. Whoops, I'm going up and I need to go down. Let's zoom out. Come down here, and over to here, and connect it, and now it's all together. Let's throw a feather on there of, let's say, Maybe like a 250. We'll just start there. That'll be a fine point to start with. And for this, let's go ahead and bring the shadows down some. Let's play with the highlights. You can really just go back and forth and really play with it. Really want these to punch. Let's go up with that. And then the blacks, yeah, just a hair. I'm kind of interested to maybe warm these up in front just a little bit. Just a bump. Something like that's fine. And let's play around with the exposure. Okay, and let's play with saturation. You know, I really want these trees to feel, to kind of separate themselves more from the others. So I'm going to bring that warmth up a little bit more. And I think that this line is feeling a little too artificial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go open this, click on the mask so I can see it again. Why are we not seeing it? Oh, we're having a glitch, of course. Here, let's, sometimes something like that can be fixed by just bouncing out and back. It kind of fixed itself. There we go. And I'm going to just bring these in a little bit more on certain parts. I think you can just cut into the tree a little bit more. That's pretty good. And let's increase the feathering to 350. And this is still too much of a giveaway, that one right in there. Let's really cut into the tree here. There. And part of that might be the mask previously. You can bounce back to your other mask, and yeah, it's not, that should cut into the tree more too. I think that was part of the giveaway. And we can bump up the feathering of this as well. Let's go to 350 with it. And there we go. I think we've really hidden it a lot better now. Now, what did we do with this one? Let's turn it off. Yeah, we could still get more out of this. Let's go ahead and push the whites up a bit. And let's really juice up that saturation. Look at that. And let's sharpen these up some. So you can make all these individual adjustments. Look at that. Now it's really just cutting through. All right, now the last thing that we need to get is these trees in the front. So let's just grab them and then we will finish this out. Another instance of Lumetri. Go around the tree. And for this, see, it's like, it's just too dark. We could, I mean, you can leave it that way. This is a tutorial on how to get the maximum dynamic range look out of your camera footage. So what I'm showing you is what I'm going to demonstrate is trying to get that. And it's your choice if you want it to be this extreme or not. But I just want to show you what the possibilities are. And I think it's fun to have a big dynamic range on a landscape like this. Now you can totally do this on more than just landscapes. Might have crisscrossed myself there. Yeah, we're okay. You can totally do this on more than landscapes. The trick is that if you have something going across the image and they're walking through all your different individual parameter adjustments with each mask, sometimes it can be a giveaway. So, if it's something that's just a lockdown shot like this works like every time. And if it's something where there's a lot more movement, you have to be a little more sensitive to that and a little more, you have a little less leeway to push certain sections as hard as you might want to, because if somebody's head then walks in front of the clouds because they're close to the camera or something, then their head is going to get like super dark all of a sudden. So you're going to need to trace around their head. And if it's moving, then you'd get into motion tracking, which is kind of another thing that we'll get into in another tutorial. But it is as simple as using these tools right in here. And as you push this in, it's going to start recording and try to follow the image that you traced out. But that's really another tutorial. We're going to leave that alone for now. And so we're going to go ahead and just affect these trees. So what we want to do with these trees is bring up the shadows. You saw me kind of play with that for a second. And look at that. Look how much more information is actually sitting in there. Let's see the exposure. That's pretty cool. Let's go ahead and feather this out. Let's try like 300. And I think on this tree I was a little too generous. Let's go ahead and cut into the tree a little bit more. And we can click off the mask to see what it's really kind of looking like to assess. That is looking pretty cool. Over here it's a little too obvious still. So again, just cut into the tree a little bit more. Just play around with it. You know, this is all completely still adjustable. Cut in a little more there. And maybe feed in a little more here. And over here. Okay, so what difference did we do with those trees? Let's see. Off, on. See, now we can actually see the trees. And again, this is a little too obvious too. So it's just a lot of tinkering when you're creating the best, you know, image that you can, right? You just get in there and keep tinkering with it. But there you go. That looks pretty good. How good did we do as a whole? Let's turn off the entire series of effects. There it was to start. We're cheating a little bit because that's totally log. Of course, this is going to look better, but my God, that looks so much better. Here, I'll give you an example here. What we can do is just turn off all effects other than just me putting a curve on it to try and break it out of it feeling like it was log. See, this last one was just the curves and the saturation boost. So there it is log. There it is with curves and saturation boost. Some people would just have it be roughly there and maybe boost saturation more. But look at the difference here. If we turn the effects on, or I'm sorry, this is where it started. Boom. That's what we did. Guys, if you don't think that looks better, then go ahead and hop on a different channel and don't worry about following me anymore. Because seriously, guys, like this is so much better. And there's just no comparison if you're trying to change the image as a whole without like tracing out sectionally different parts with different masks and putting on the feathers and just getting in there and making those individual parameter adjustments of highlights and shadows. This is absolutely the way to go. Again, let's just turn off all effects. There it was. There it is now. Or we can look at it with just the LUT, just the curves on it that broke it out of it being officially a log profile. So here's just the curves on it and boost and saturation. And then here it is after we turn on all of our stuff. There's no definitive exact one way to do any of this stuff. This is a complete playground of exploration and ways to approach everything. So this is the method that I use to get the dynamic range increase across my images. If you find this information of value, by all means, hit the like button. That would be awesome. If you want to subscribe, that's great too. And there's a notification bell. If you hit that, you get notified every week. I'm putting out episodes every week. So a minimum one, and I'm trying to hit 2 a week, but every Thursday you can count on a new episode. And sometimes it's going to be tutorials, and sometimes it's going to be coming out with me on production. I'm actually working on one right now for music video for Defy the Tyrant, and that's going to be a really fun behind the scenes video to kind of check out because that was a really cool video. I am in the midst of editing it now, and I can't wait to release that one. I think this is going to be definitely one of my best music videos to date. Anyway, take care, guys, and I will catch you on the next episode.
Movie Voice.